Hello, I am Peter Okwacha. Welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories. A new government and a new attempt to unite Sudan. Transitional leaders and major rebel groups signed a declaration for peace.
What we want from peace is to be able to remain committed to the constitution, to believe in the principles of the Sudanese revolution.
Brains for hire. The Kenyans paid to write essays for British and American students. Also on the program, digging for answers. How forensic scientists in Africa are learning to better identify human remains.
When you lose a relative, when there's nobody to bury, you're not happy. Because when you bury, you have closure.
And in sports, it's the return of the Champions League with Spurs, Real Madrid and PSG taking part in Tuesday's games. Thanks for joining us here on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. They vowed to unite the country, and now Sudan's transitional government, as well as several major rebel groups, have signed a peace agreement. The deal will open up humanitarian aid routes into areas cut off by conflict for the past 8 years. The agreement, which was signed in South Sudan, includes rebel groups from Darfur, the Nuba Mountains, and the Blue Nile region. Daniel Henry reports.
Peace in Sudan is in their hands. The transitional government and major rebel groups came together, setting the stage for more talks. There's a long way to go, but it's a start.
What we want from peace is to be able to remain committed to the constitution, to believe in the principles of the Sudanese revolution, but above all that, our ability to champion the causes of the marginalized and the internally displaced.
The problem in Sudan, if it is not solved, it will always spill into South Sudan, and South Sudan will also be in trouble.
Thousands of people have been killed in Sudan's civil wars, including the conflict in the western Darfur region, where rebels have been fighting the government since 2003. Monday's agreement includes a permanent ceasefire across Darfur, the Nuba Mountains, and the Blue Nile region. It means that aid can now flow into areas that have been cut off during Omar al-Bashir's rule. So, a political declaration for the future has been signed and sealed. But will it lead to long-term stability in Sudan? Daniel Henry, BBC News.
More on that story now. Muruti Mutiga is project director at the International Crisis Group. He joins me now. Muruti, just yesterday your organization published a detailed report of events in Sudan over the last 6 months or so, and it acknowledges the encouraging steps that the military leadership and civilian opposition have taken, agreeing to a power-sharing deal. But the generals continue to wield enormous influence. Have they shown any signs that they can respect this new peace deal with other rebel groups?
Yeah, so Peter, circling back, I think we have to acknowledge that what has happened in Sudan is an extraordinary transformation. A very peaceful, diverse, sustained peace protest movement managed to oust one of the most entrenched autocrats. But there are major challenges because, as we know, the generals only signed the peace deal under immense external pressure. It's a good thing. Under Bashir, we witnessed that he saw the problem of the armed groups as only one to be solved through security methods. It's a good thing that they are now acknowledging the political element, but we have to question the political will of the generals, in particular noting that some of them led the militia that committed terrible atrocities, especially in Darfur.
Of course, and the Janjaweed have been mentioned as part of those militia who carried out those atrocities in Darfur. But the transition is quite fraught, and people say that there's a risk that things could change. But have you noticed any change in the attitude of the military to say, well, we will abide with this peace agreement?
I think it was a good step that they actually signed the agreement. What we advocate in the report is that international actors who are extremely influential in getting them to sign the deal need to stay engaged. The African Union, for example, should commit to stay as a guarantor of the agreement. The European Union can play a role in offering financial support. The Americans have a critical role because the state sponsor of terrorism designation they slapped on Sudan in the mid-90s keeps its economy critically weak. We advocate that they should lift that, but above all, that they should engage particularly with the Gulf monarchies in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi to persuade them to get the generals to abide by the
Okay,
deal.
Muruti, I mean, one of the biggest headaches in this agreement is how to keep all these different rebel groups, there are quite a few of them, happy. How do you do that? Very briefly.
They will have to make painful concessions on both sides, and very quickly I'll say that Khartoum needs to recognize it cannot keep the country together through force. That's the mistake it has made since 1955. On their part, the armed groups need to recognize that there are many actors that need accommodation. They need to soften their demands. They need to approach this with an open mind. And both sides, above all, should recognize that the 6-month window they have is extremely important.
Okay.
This is a rare window of opportunity.
All right, Muruti Mutiga from the ICG, thank you very much for your input into this story. Let's take a quick look now at other stories making the headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. In the Gambia, the right-hand man of the former President Yahya Jammeh has said he feels deeply remorseful for the atrocities that he allowed to happen during the leader's 21-year tenure. The former Army Captain Edwards Singate told the Gambian Truth Commission he felt responsible having installed Yahya Jammeh in office. In Cameroon, 7 soldiers accused of killing 2 women and children have pleaded not guilty at a military tribunal. The killings were caught on camera and the soldiers were arrested following a BBC Africa Eye investigation that managed to identify the location in the far north of the country. The ruling is expected in November. In Guinea, several organizers of recent demonstrations have been convicted and sentenced to prison. The coordinator of an alliance of opposition groups was given a 12-month sentence and 4 others were given 6 months. Their defense lawyer told the BBC they believe their fate was already sealed and that they will appeal the court's decision. And in the UK, the Brexit debate has intensified as Prime Minister Boris Johnson tries to push his deal through by Thursday. MPs are gearing up to vote tonight on a 3-day timetable set up by Mr. Johnson. He said earlier, if it's rejected, he will drop the bill and aim for a general election. The UK is set to leave the EU on October 31st. Now, we all know that essay writing is a hard but essential part of studying. But would you pay someone to do it for you? A new report says university students in Europe and the US are doing just that. And it's young Kenyan graduates who are writing for them. The global market for this academic ghostwriting is estimated to be worth about $1 billion. Anthony Rungu has been talking to the people who write for so-called essay mills in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi.
They don't attend their classes at all, especially the online ones. They just leave that task to somebody else who wants money. And so it's a very symbiotic kind of relationship. I can work, you're lazy, you have money. I do it, I get money. First, you're given a topic, a simple topic that the students are given by their tutor, their lecturers, facilitators. And then you're supposed to do it. Or you go online, you search on some libraries like Routledge, Google Scholar, get the information, and then get to writing.
I would level myself at basically between a master's and PhD. I can write a full paper, master's level, and on the PhD levels we usually get bits, because most of them are usually so huge. You get something like 100 pages. It's not something that you can do alone, so you handle the bits. for every graduation for a particular engineering class, you get like the market is only available for 1 or 2 guys. So the rest of the guys have to look for jobs elsewhere. For me, I've actually applied for an account that pays minimum $25 per page. Doesn't matter the kind of paper, the agency, the minimum I can get is 25 per page. It can go up to 30 or 50.
It pays well, more than other jobs I can imagine. If I get out there and start looking for jobs, I might be given a job that is 30K. Well, I can sit in my house doing academic writing and get up to 60 or 50K.
There are people who are actually building houses through academic writing. Some of them have a number of accounts, someone like having 5 to 10 accounts, and each of those accounts gives them about $2,000 every 2 weeks. I don't think even if he's offered a job right now, he's willing to. Yeah. It's unethical when you're doing an assignment for someone who is in high school. I believe that someone should do their work like by themselves. When someone is conducting their research for their master's level or for their PhD, I don't think they can have so much room to do everything for a particular project. So they usually hire assistants.
Well, Dr. Fatu Taki is a university lecturer from Freetown in Sierra Leone and joins me from there now. Doctor, how widespread is this practice?
I think it's a global thing. In Sierra Leone, we do have cases of this happening where it's sort of a common knowledge and an open secret that you have students have other people write their papers for them, dissertations or essays or projects. But it's hard to, how do you know when you're doing assessment that someone else has written someone's paper, except if, sort of during the course of the term, you've done an assessment, obviously, of assignments or tests, and you know the level of the student, and they appear with some fantastically written paper, then that can, wave the red flag.
When I was in university, you had to basically defend all your theses. How do you stop this from happening now? I mean, is that a way to do it?
It can be a way where you have, oral exams where people will have to defend what they've written. But also, when you do have written exams, we have had cases which of course, that's when you improve on the spot, where you've had impersonators going to take exams for somebody else. And those are easily caught, because then if you're supposed to have a female name and you see a male, carrying that name or the booklet, then that should call your attention. But it should be stopped, because people would end up with degrees and qualifications, and it's not really them. It's not a true.
I was just going to make that point, because it brings into question that the degrees universities are giving out these days. Can technology help, though? I do know that there is software that can check plagiarism. Is anything happening on the front of essay mills to try and check them, technology-wise?
Technology-wise, like you say, the plagiarism has to do with referencing. So the software like Turnitin, people can use to make sure that people haven't plagiarized or taken someone else's idea, except you do the proper referencing to say that actually this is someone's idea, or I've used or I've leaned on it for a reason. Technology-wise, I am not sure if something will be developed. It's not impossible, I think, for something to be developed that could tell if somebody else has written somebody's essay or project for them. But okay. I think it's a hard one.
Okay, very interesting topic there. Dr. Martha Taki, university lecturer from Sierra Leone. Thank you very much. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwoche. Still to come on the program, Mimi with the sports. And ahead of the start of the new NBA season, we catch up with Cameroon's Pascal Siakam, who plays for the defending champions, the Toronto Raptors. I'm Peter Okwacha, the top story this hour. Sudan's transitional government and several major rebel groups have signed a peace agreement. The deal will open up humanitarian aid routes into the Darfur, Blue Nile and Nuba Mountains. Now, the death of a relative is tragic, but it can be worse if their body is never found. With a number of ongoing conflicts in Africa, it's a reality for many people. But a group of forensic experts from Argentina have been in South Africa training professionals from across the continent on how best to find and excavate remains. The BBC's Voldy Karelsa went to see what they were learning and how it can help in their own countries.
The secrets of the past are often buried just under the surface.
We find a skull and then we try to see what else we can find.
A mock crime scene with many bodies, each with their own story.
But we must remove everything level by level until we see the whole skeleton.
But this time, it's just a training course, the only one on the continent for professionals interested in forensic anthropology. It involves using archaeological techniques to solve criminal cases.
In Nigeria right now, our forensic capability is at a very low level. And because of that, a lot of crimes are not really solved. And so I think this is going to go a long way.
Enjoy. I want 3Ds for the skeleton.
The trainers from the Argentine Forensic Anthropology Unit have a long history with Africa.
Well, we have been working in Africa since 1994. We came first to work to Ethiopia after Mengistu fall. And then along the years, we were working in 17 African countries, investigating cases like in Chad and Central African Republic.
These skills are particularly important for a continent still grappling with a number of ongoing conflicts.
So I'm a medical doctor working in Juba Teaching Hospital mortuary. In the context of our country, it's not that stable. Many wars are going there. Sometimes people are missing, and this course is very good. Yeah, it can help a lot.
So we'll go in a line and session.
Now we have suffering from many of the families in Sudan, suffering of missing persons during the last 6 months or the last year, and maybe during the whole last 30 years. We have a lot of issues that it's really affect the community. It really affect the family, and they need help. We really would like to make Sudan a better place.
It's very important that we don't alter the remains and that we treat them with care.
So they don't just dig up the bodies. Students are also required to put together a skeleton and analyze it.
I hope that they will learn the techniques and they will apply it in their own context when they go back to their countries. And even if it's a skeleton, it's still a human being.
For many communities in Africa, burials are important.
When you lose a relative, when there's nobody to bury, you're not happy. Because when you bury, you have closure.
The students hope the skills they learn here will help families who still mourn their missing. Voldy Karelsa, BBC News, Johannesburg.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's now time for some sports. Mimi, football, basketball, you've got it all.
Got it all today, indeed, Peter. We start with football, where the Champions League has resumed, and in just over an hour's time, there will be more kickoffs across Europe. And last season's finalists, Tottenham Hotspur, Manchester City, and Real Madrid are some of the teams in action today. Belgian side Club Bruges will be playing Paris Saint-Germain at home. Now Bruges defender Clinton Mata, who was born in Belgium but plays for Angola at international level, and he expects a tough encounter with the quality players that PSG have.
As you said, their entire team is in top form. When it happens, then the individual players can also show their capabilities. Therefore, for me, it's the same facing Mbappe, Di Maria or Icardi. The most important thing is their entire team. I only think of going onto the pitch and putting in a good performance. Every Champions League game is difficult. We are now facing a top PSG side who are in form. They have won again at the weekend, and I'm sure it's going to be a very good game tomorrow.
To cricket, where India completed a 3-0 whitewash of South Africa in their Test series. They won by an innings and 202 runs after bowling out the tourists for 133 in Ranchi. The Proteas added only 1 run to their overnight total and survived just 2 overs on day 4. And Namibia beat Scotland by 24 runs in the men's T20 World Cup qualifier. Namibia had lost their first 2 games. And finally to basketball, where the NBA tips off today with the defending champions Toronto Raptors, who host the New Orleans Pelicans. They've got some big-name African stars, one of them being Cameroon's Pascal Siakam. He's just signed a huge 4-year contract extension worth millions of dollars. The 25-year-old, who was named the league's most improved player last season, says his dad wanted him to be a priest, but things have obviously turned out differently. He's been speaking to BBC Sport Africa's Isaac Finin.
I went to boarding school for whole my middle school and high school, so kind of like away from the city and stuff like that. So I didn't really get to enjoy it much as a kid, but I think it just prepared me for this moment and being here now and being at this level and just keeping the focus that I need to be the best player that I can be.
What was it like in boarding school?
That was different. It was a seminary and Catholic school, so it was really strict. And I think when I went there, I didn't really know how to do a lot of things, and they really taught me how to be a man and how to take responsibilities and take care of myself on my own, and just waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning to having a whole schedule that you have to follow. It takes dedication, and being there for 7 years takes dedication because a lot of people don't do that.
So obviously you're in a seminary. Were you training to be a priest?
It wasn't really training to be a priest, but obviously you're around church, and that's what you do every day. So I was around that, and my dad at some point, thought, it could be something that I would want to do, but it was never my calling.
When did that moment change for you where you figured, I'm going to give this basketball thing a go?
I've always kind of stayed away from basketball just because all my brothers played, and I kind of wanted to do something different. So I stayed away from it as much as I could. It was a lot of years, maybe 16, 15 years, 17 years or something like that before, I kind of I kind of grew super fast, and I had an opportunity to go to the States to play basketball, so I took it.
What a great season he had last year. Peter, that's all the sport.
Do you think the Raptors can, hold on to that championship at the end of the season?
It's going to be tough, especially as one of the best players last season is no longer there. But Masai Ujiri, as we know, half Nigerian, half Kenyan. I feel he's a driving force behind that team, and them, of course, winning the champions title. So we'll see.
At the end of the season.
See, eh?
Thank you very much, Mimi. Now, you like royalty. Just hold on for this next story. Just before we go, when it comes to celebrating, it's hard to beat us Africans. But how about this? The ancient ritual of a Japanese emperor ascending to the throne. Take a look at these pictures from Tokyo, where earlier today, Emperor Naruhito was formally enthroned in an elaborate ceremony at the Imperial Palace. The Sokoi no Rei, or the ceremony of ascension, saw the emperor sitting inside a 6.5-meter-high Takamikura throne. Dressed in an yellow-orange robe, worn only by emperors on special occasions. His wife, Empress Masako, reportedly clothed in 12 layers of robes, was seen in a separate, smaller throne. Wow. That's it on Focus on Africa from me, Peter Okwoche, and the rest of the team. Thanks for watching. See you soon.